Hello, and welcome to week number 16, pre-college math. This is the last week of new material, and then next week we're going to do a exam review, and I'm going to go through all of the exam review problems, and then the final week, then the final exam. Now, some of you are going to look at it and you're going to say, oh, I can do this final exam right away. That's perfectly fine. You do not have to wait until week number 18 to do it. Week number 17, you could do it. You could do it this week if you wanted to. It makes no difference. Once you have finished all of the material in the exam, you are done for this semester. So let's get going. This week, we are going to be doing what is called long division and synthetic division with polynomial functions. And hopefully you should have seen this in Algebra 2 when you were in Algebra 2. I know we did this during first semester in my Algebra 2 class. Using long division and synthetic division to divide polynomials. That is our objective for this week. Now, when you use long division, it is exactly the same thing as using long division if you're just dividing a number out. It's just with long division of a polynomial, you've got all those variables in there that makes it a whole lot more complicated to divide. But if you take a look here, if I gave you a problem like, I'm just going to go to a new page. I mean, you can use this as an example, or I'm going to use a different example here. I'm going to go to a blank whiteboard. Okay, so let's say I gave you a problem like, let's go, oh, that's a square root bracket. I don't want that. Working on radicals in my Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 class. So let's say I gave you a problem like 55 divided by 3. And I ask you to divide that. And then I'm going to ask you to divide this polynomial, which is going to, obviously it's going to be harder, but let's go x squared plus 4x plus 5, just making it up. So the first thing you do when you do long division, you just ask yourself, how many times does 3 go into this first number? So 3 goes into 5 one time. So I just put a 1 up here. So what we do here is we do the same thing. Basically it's like this times what gives you x squared? Well, x times x gives us x squared. So 1x. Then our next step would be to multiply. I take the 1 times the 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. And I subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2, and then I bring my next term down. Same thing here. I multiply. The only problem is I have to multiply 1x times x plus 3, so I'm just going to go 1x times x plus 3 off to the side, so that gives me x squared plus 3x. Okay, so that gives me x squared plus 3x. Now, instead of subtracting, when I do polynomial division, I like to add the opposite, so I just do this, and that's the same thing here. Adding a negative 3 is exactly the same thing. So when I add straight down, this crosses off. If I add straight down here, 4x plus negative 3x, that gives me 1x. I bring the 5 down, and then we start all over again. 3 goes into 2. No, it doesn't. So 3 times what gives me 25? Well, 3 times 8 is 24, so that's as close as I can get. So 8 times 3 is 24. Subtract, I get 1, so my remainder is 1. We usually put it over our divisor. Okay, same thing here. X times what gives me 1x? Well, 1 does. So now I multiply, and I get 1x plus 3. Add the opposite, and I get a remainder of 2. So my remainder is going to be 2 over x plus 3. So that's long division. Now, there's another way of doing it that we're going to work on this week, and it's called synthetic division. Now, synthetic division is so much cooler than long division. So I'm going to see if I can erase some of this stuff here. I don't think I can erase the whole thing at one time. It'd be nice if I could. Oops, that does not work. Let's see if I can do this. I'm just going to see if I can just white this all out, which will be about the same concept. Okay, so now we talked about long division. So now synthetic division is basically the same thing, except we are going to get rid of all the variables. So there's always numbers in front of our terms here, 1, 4, and 5. So when you use synthetic division, you just write those numbers down. The 1, the 4, and the 5. 1, 4, 5. And then whatever makes this equal to 0, so x plus 3, negative 3 makes it 0, that goes in this little box here. Then you bring the first term down, straight down, so that becomes a 1 here. Then you multiply. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Then you add straight down. 4 plus negative 3 is 1. Then you multiply. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, and you just keep doing that. Then when you're finished, the last number is going to be the remainder. And then since this started off as x squared, when you divide by an x, your next term is x, so this is going to be 1x plus 1. So my answer is 1x plus 1, remainder 2. Huh, that's exactly the same thing as I came up with up here, except it was way quicker because there's no variables in there. Okay, so synthetic division is a quick way of doing long division. Now on your assessment this week, it asks you to solve one using, or the first problem is long division, so you have to show your steps. Then the rest of them you can do with synthetic division. All right, let me get back to my week 16 files here. Okay, so we just talked about long division. So let's do another problem. So if I was going to do long division on this one, so just do another example. I have x minus 3 here. X squared plus 5x minus 28. X times what gives me x squared? Well, that's 1x. So now I'm going to multiply. So that gives me 1x squared minus 3x. Now I'm going to add the opposite. So the x squared is going to cross out. 5x plus 3x is 8x. Bring down the next term. So x times what gives me 8x? That's going to be 8. So I'm going to multiply. So that's going to give me 8x minus 24. Again, I'm going to add the opposite. So that's going to give me negative 4 here. So I'm going to have a remainder, negative 4 over x minus 3. And there's my answer. That's long division. All right. So now let's talk about synthetic division. Okay, let's do another example of that one. Here's the notes for the synthetic division. If you didn't go through the lesson tutorial, I would highly recommend that you do that. So here's an example. So I've got 3x to the fourth minus 1x to the third plus 5x minus 1. Now, this is a problem that some students are going to have. If there is a term that is missing, you need to write that. You have to put a 0 in place of it. So for example, in this problem, I would rewrite this as 3x to the fourth minus 1x to the third plus 0x squared plus 5x minus 1. So now if I'm going to do synthetic division, I take the numbers in front and see how, if you didn't put that 0 in there, it's going to really mess up your answer. So I've got 3, negative 1, 0, 5, negative 1. What makes this equal to 0? Negative 2. So I bring my first term down. Just bring the 3 down. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Add straight down. Gives me negative 7. Negative 2 times negative 7 is 14. Add down. Negative 2 times 14 is negative 28. Add straight down. What does that give me? Negative 23. Multiply. That gives me positive 46. And then that gives me negative or positive 45. This is my remainder. Now, if the remainder ever turns out to be 0, then you know that this would be a factor of this. Cool about synthetic division, it shows how to factor things down. Okay, so now in this problem, it's not a 0, so it's not a factor, but my answer, since I start off with the fourth power, this will be 3x to the third minus 7x squared plus 14x minus 23, remainder 45. So that is synthetic division. It's really a much easier way to divide than using long division. However, as I said, you do have to do one problem on the assessment this week with long division. And then there's another, let's see, here's my next slide here. There's something that's called the remainder theorem. If you have a problem and you want to know what the solution is. So for example, if I gave you a problem like P of 3 is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 5. And I asked you to plug 3 into here to figure out what P of 3 is equal to. Well, that means you just plug 3 into here. So 3 squared is 9, plus 4 times 3 is 12, plus 5. So that gives us 26. Well, if you use synthetic division, you can do it also. So if I use synthetic division, I just put down the 1, the 4, the 5. Oops, I'll do it over here so I have more room to show you. And then the number we're plugging in is 3. So I just put 3 here. Bring down the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 plus 3 is 7. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 plus 5 is 26. The remainder, lo and behold, is the value of that function. So this is really a cool thing that you can do when you have a function and you want to plug a number in. So for example, in this problem here, it says 4x squared minus 9x plus 2 when x equals 3. So they want us to find the value when x equals 3. Well, I could do it just by plugging the 3 in and figuring that out, or I could use synthetic division. I could just go 4, negative 9, 2, bring the 4 down. 3 times 4 is 12, add straight down, that gives me 3. 3 times 3 is 9, so that's 11. So when I plug in x equals 3, I should get, so P of 3 is 11. All right, so that basically covers all of the material for this week. Brian, any questions before I go on to the practice problems? Now, obviously everything was gone. You know, if you watch the lesson tutorial, I went through all of this much slower. But do you have any questions on any of that? All right, so then let's work on the practice problems for this week. Oh no, I think I clicked on the wrong, uh-oh. Don't think I have the practice problems in here. Did I click on the wrong week 18? Let's see, week 16. Huh. I should have all the practice problems in there. Okay, there we go. That should be the beginning of the practice problems. Okay, so this is the first practice problem for this week. It says use the remainder theorem and synthetic division to find the function's value. So it wants to know what g of 0 is equal to. Now, would I use synthetic division to do this? Are you kidding? 0. If you put 0 in here, 0, 0, 0, your answer is going to be 6. Would I use synthetic division? No, I would not. But let's try synthetic division, see if we get the same answer. So I've got 3x to the 6, so that would be 3. I'm missing a fifth degree, so I have to put a 0 there. Then a 3 for the 4th degree. There's no 3rd degree, so that's going to be 0. My 2nd degree is -3. No 1st degree, so that has to be 0. And a 6. So this is what it would look like if I did synthetic division. And I'm plugging in 0. So bring down to 3. 0 times 3 is 0. 0 plus it, that's 0. 0 times 0 is 0. That's 3. That's 0. That's 0. 0 times 0 is 0. That's -3. It's a lot of zeros. That's 0. That becomes 0 here. That's 0. Add straight down, I get 6. So I do get the same answer regardless if I use synthetic division or just plug it in. But if you're plugging in a 0, I mean, anytime you have, that's going to be 0, 0, 0. So it's just going to be +6. So my answer is letter A. Would not have used synthetic division on this one. Way too complicated. Use long division to divide. Eesh. Okay, now I will do this one with long division, but in reality, you could use synthetic division because this is a practice problem. But let's review synthetic or long division again. Okay, so long division, I've got x to the 4th plus 9x to the 3rd plus 20x squared minus x minus 5. Yikes. And I'm going to divide that by x plus 5. What times x gives me x to the 4th? Well, that would be x to the 3rd. So if I multiply, I end up with x to the 4th plus 5x to the 3rd. I'm going to add the opposite. So that gives me 0. That gives me, what, 4x to the third? Bring down my next term. X times what gives me 4x to the third? Well, that's going to be 4x squared. Then multiply. That gives me 4x to the third plus 20x squared. Ooh, that's nice because that's going to cross off. So I'm going to add the opposite. That's going to be 0. Bring down my next term, negative x. So x times what? Oops. Gives me negative x. That's going to be negative 1. That's going to be negative x minus 5. If I add straight down, it's going to cross off. So my answer is just x to the third plus 4x squared minus 1. Let's see here. So x squared, or x to the third plus 4x squared minus 1. I'm going to go with letter C for that one. All right. Number 3 on the practice, it says use long division. Okay. Okay, I can do that. Now, since they're both to the power, it's kind of a weird one to divide. So I've got 16x plus 8. And I'm dividing 2x plus 1 in there. So 2x times what gives me is 16x. Well, that's just 8. So if I multiply that, I get 16x plus 8, which when I add straight or subtract, it's going to end up being 0. So my answer is just 8 for that one. All right, practice problem number 4. Use long division, divide. Now I'm not going to use long division on this one. I'm going to use synthetic division because we've gone through long division and this is a practice, so why not practice synthetic division also? So if I'm going to write this out, every term, x to the third, x to the second, x to the first, so all my terms are there. So I've got 1, 5, 16, 80, and what makes this equal to 0? Negative 5. Bring down my first term. So bring down the 1. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Add straight down. Gives me 0. Negative 5 times 0 is 0. Add straight down. That gives me 16. Negative 5 times 16. Is that negative 80? I think it is. Add straight down. You get 0. So what's my answer here? Well, I started off with x to the third. So this is going to be x squared plus 16 because that's my 0 term. So that's 0x plus 16. So, and remainder 0. So this is, so if I asked you to factor this thing, okay, what does this factor down to? Well, I can tell you it factors down to x plus 5 times x squared plus 16. Why do I know that? Because my remainder was 0. If you ever have a remainder of 0, that means what you were dividing into it is a factor, and what's left over is a factor. So this problem right here factors down to this. It's pretty cool. It's another way of factoring if you didn't know how to factor an x to the third type of problem. All right, let's see here. Number 5. It says use long division to divide. Now, in this problem, I want to use synthetic division just to show you where people are going to go wrong. This is x to the third plus 8, which really is x to the third plus 0x squared plus 0x plus 8. So if I'm going to use synthetic division, I'm going to, whatever makes this equal to 0, so that's negative 2. And then I've got 1, 0, 0, 8. Bring down the 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Add straight down, that's negative 2. That gives me 4 when I multiply. Add down, that gives me 4. Negative 8. Oh, again, I end up with 0 for my remainder. That means this is a factor of this. Because anytime you're left with a 0. So what's left over? So I started with an x to the third, so this is going to be 1x squared minus 2x plus 4. So that is what it divides out to be. So 1x squared minus 2x plus 4. I'm going to go with letter A. All right, Brian, we have just cruised through the first 5 problems. Any questions on any one of them? All right. Let's go on to problem number 6. Let's see here, number 6. It says, what is the result if you divide to rewrite the expression? Now, it doesn't ask me to do long division or synthetic division. I would always go to synthetic division if I didn't have to do it one way or the other, because synthetic division is so much easier. So I'm going to go 3, -1, 7, and then whatever makes this equal to 0, so that's +1. Bring down the first term, that's 3, then multiply. 1 times 3 is 3, add straight down, 2. 1 times 2 is 2, add straight down, 9. Okay, so this time I have a remainder. So what does that mean? It means x minus 1 is not a factor of this, okay? Because that's having a remainder of 0 means it's a factor. So what do I have? I start with x as second. So my answer is 3x to the first plus 2 with a remainder of 9 over x minus 1. So 3x, oh, 3x plus 2, there we go. And then 9 over x. So I'm going to go with letter B for that problem. All right, number 7. Use synthetic division to divide. Oh, so now they're telling me to use synthetic division. I love it. So I'm going to go 4, 1, -11, 6. All I did is I just wrote down the leading coefficients. And then I'm going to divide by whatever makes this equal to 0. So that's -2. Bring down the 4. -2 times 4 is -8. 1 plus -8 is -7. Multiply, that gives me 14. That's 3. -6, remainder of 0. That means x plus 2 is a factor of this. And what's left over? So if they asked me to factor it down, I would end up with x plus 2 times, what is that, 4x squared minus 7x plus 3. So that's what it would factor down to. Now, I don't know, this might factor even farther, but it didn't ask me to do that. It just asked me to use synthetic division to divide. So this would be my answer right here. 4x squared minus 7x plus 3. So I'm going to go with letter B. Number 8, use synthetic division to divide. Now, this time they're trying to trick you by putting all these in different orders. So what we really want to do is we want to make sure that it's in standard form. So I'm going to rewrite this as 5x to the third plus, or minus, I'll go negative 27x squared plus 22x plus 24. Now if I use synthetic division, that's going to give me 5, -27, 22, 24. And I'm going to use a 2 in here. All right, so bring down the 5. 2 times 5 is 10. If I add straight down, I get -17. Multiply, that gives me -34. So that's -12. 2 times -12 is -24. Lo and behold, I have a 0 for a remainder. That means x minus 2 is a factor. And what else does it factor down to? 5x squared minus 17x minus 12. So 5x squared minus 17x minus 12 looks like letter A for my answer. All right, number 9. Number 9, it says to use synthetic division to evaluate. Okay, so now I don't need to use synthetic division to evaluate. I could just plug 4 in here. So that would be -3 times squared minus 4 times 4 plus 1. That's what evaluating means. It means plugging a number in, figuring out what the value is. Now, let's see here. So if I did this, so that would be 16 times -3. So that's -48. So that's -48 minus 16 plus 1. So that's going to be, let's see here, -64. So -63 would be my answer if I did it just by plugging it in. Now let's use synthetic division. So I get -3, -4, 1. I'm plugging in 4. Bring down the -3. 4 times -3 is -12. That gives me -16. 4 times -16 is -64. 1 plus negative 64 is negative 63. That is my solution when I evaluate. So negative 63 is our solution. And I got it both ways. I just plugged it in to evaluate, or I use synthetic division to evaluate. Either way is fine. Synthetic division sometimes makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to square or take a number to the third power or something like that. So it really just takes all of the powers out of the equation, which sometimes is kind of nice. All right, and then the last problem on this week's assessment, or practice, I'm sorry. It says, if x equals negative 1 is a root, so that means it's a factor, right? Use synthetic division to factor the polynomial completely and list all the real solutions of the equation. Okay, so if x minus 1 is a solution, then what I know, since this is a third degree polynomial, I know that it's probably going to factor down to 3 distinct factors, right? But x minus 1 is a solution, so I know that x plus 1 is a factor. Okay, so there's a difference. A factor is something that, you know, is a factor of it, and the solution is the solution to the problem. So they want me to factor this whole problem down. They want me to factor x to the third plus 4x squared minus x minus 4 all the way down. They want me to factor this whole thing. Well, I know x plus 1 is a factor, so let's use synthetic division to help us with this problem. So I'm going to use negative 1 in here, bring down the 1, negative 1 times, and I know for a fact that this has to be 0. If this doesn't turn out to be 0, then this is not a factor, right? So I know it has to be 0. So negative 1, so that's going to be negative 1 here. It's going to be 3. That's going to be negative 3. It's going to be negative 4. Negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. Add straight down to 0. That is a factor. Awesome. So now, what's left over? 1x squared plus 3x minus 4. Now, I'm not going to use synthetic division anymore because I'm pretty good at factoring. What two numbers multiply to negative 4? That add up to 3. X plus 4, x minus 1. So this thing factors, this problem right here factors to x plus 1, x plus 4, x minus 1. What are my solutions? Negative 1, negative 4, positive 1. So let's take a look and see where so x minus 4, nope, that's not right. X plus 4, x plus 1, x minus 1, negative 4, negative 1, 1. I'm going to go with letter E for my answer. So that, when you think about it, that last problem that I just did, what an amazing way to be able to solve a function, to get the solutions without having to graph it, without having to do anything else. I can use synthetic division to factor a polynomial function down. All right, Brian, I talked a little bit fast today. Any questions? All right, that is it for this week. If you have any questions, please never hesitate to email or call me, okay? All right, have a great week. Stay warm.